Hey, what's going on? This is Dallas J. Moore here on SocialRepublic.com. I'm outside today. It's really nice out, and we're at JCPenney's. Actually, it's interesting because I wanted to talk about how to win with good branding. And I think JCPenney's did this just recently with their rebrand, but more importantly with hiring Ellen DeGeneres, the amazing comic and host of her own show. They hired her to be the new spokesperson, and a lot of people were unhappy about it. And JCPenney's did branding right. So I wanted to hit on a few things to talk about how to win with good branding. JCPenney's did it right with their branding. But the question is, how to win with good branding? How does that apply to everybody? We're going to talk about the few things here that are really important and are core and key to having a good brand and to win with good branding. So to go back to JCPenney's and talk about them hiring Ellen DeGeneres, a lot of people got upset that now Ellen was the new spokesperson for JCPenney's. This brings us to our first point. So stick to your guns. As a brand, you're going to have a lot of people call you on stuff. You're going to have people that aren't of your ideal customers, and they're not going to like you. And they're going to like your competitors instead. So you always have to stick to your guns. Whatever that is, stick to your guns. You have to be you, and you have to be proud. So once you know who you are, you have to stick to your guns, and you have to be proud of who you are, because again, your customers were going to identify with you, and that's what makes a great brand. You have to decide on your values. This is so important. What are your values as a brand, as a business, as a company, as a nonprofit, whatever it applies to, you have to find out what your values are. Because once you have your values, you can communicate those values to your customers, and your customers are going to be able to relate to you. If you don't have any values, or you try to be all things to all people, you're not going to be able to relate to anyone, because no one will be able to relate to you. Don't try to be all things to all people. Find your values and let people know what they are. Again, once you've got your values, communicate them. You have to let people know what your values are, because a lot of times most people aren't going to think to ask. They're going to assume, and you don't want them to assume, just like you don't want to assume. So you have to communicate what your values are, what sticking to your guns means for you, and what being yourself and being proud means. Also, you can't change because there's an uproar, somebody's unhappy. You're going to have a lot of people unhappy. If you're doing it right, and there isn't anybody upset, somewhere we've done it wrong. People are going to be upset. That's just part of business. That's part of being a great brand. And it's okay. You don't need to appeal to everyone. You need to appeal to people who care about what your products and services are, what your brand is about, and what your values are. Moving forward, support your own decisions. A lot of brands do things. They change logos, they change their tagline, they change their demographic, they add in new products, they buy out a competitor. These are all decisions that sometimes people question. As a brand, as a business, don't question your decisions. Stick to your guns and be proud of that. It's important because if you're not sure, your customers won't be sure. And if you're communicating that message, you really don't want what questions that might bring up. So always be good with the decisions that you make. You have to rep your brand everywhere you go. So if you're going out to a football game, represent your brand. If you're walking down the hall in the office, represent your brand. It's all about wearing your war paint all the time. So support your own brand everywhere you go all the time. It's really important. And don't try to convert the converted. People are going to identify with the values that you have, so you don't need to sell them. Don't need to worry about it. And try not to be anybody but yourself. This is where a lot of brands fail. They try to do the same marketing stunt or the same advertising campaign or the same this or that. Don't do that. It's terrible. You end up looking like a follower and nobody will respect you. So instead of trying to be something you're not, be something that you are. It's so much easier, it's so much more fun, and you'll be able to find that you've got better relationships with your customers because you're unique and you're on your own. And you're not trying to be something that you're not. Which also leads us to our next point. Lead, don't follow. Your customers want to identify with you and what makes you unique. Because if you're like everybody else, it's highly likely that you're going to find yourselves closing the doors for good before too long. So, recap, stick to your guns. Be you and be proud. Decide on your values. Once you've decided on your values, communicate those values. And don't change because somebody gets upset. If somebody's upset, let them be upset. Support your own decisions and choices. Represent your brand everywhere you go, anytime you go somewhere. Don't convert the converted because they've already bought into your values. You don't need to sell them. And try not to be anybody but yourself. Be you. It's better. Trust me. And don't be a follower. Be a leader. Your customers expect that. So this is Dallas J. Moore on socialrepublic.com talking about this week how to win with good branding. Have a great rest of the week. Thanks for watching.